Okay, for the rest of the period, I wanted to go through some of the pages that were created by students. Actually, this one has been corrected to a large degree. We spent quite a bit of time last night working on this one. Is there anything, though, on this page that jumps out at you as maybe could be improved? What do you think? Anything on this page that you would improve? Actually, like I said, we spent quite a bit of time improving this one, actually, so we'll go to another one that hasn't been improved in a second. But out of forgetting about, I mean, just still with what's there, is there anything that seems odd to you that you would change? It's going to be interactive today, so need some comments. What would you change on this page? Which one are you talking about now? Okay.
The picture is dividing the text into two parts, and you have to jump from the left bottom to the right top.
I do try to avoid that. A lot of that had to do with, you notice that they have, here's your, well, even this isn't quite, this is 4 across 6. This is 1 across 2. This is 2 across 4. This is 3 across 4. There's not one really 6-column format in it. They have lots of really wide formats, and mostly, I would say you go to that, well, to a 2-column format. If you had one on the front page, that'd be fine. I wouldn't have 2 stories with that go across where each column is 2 columns wide, considering a standard 6-column. We have 2 of them here, and then we have other ones that are still wider than normal. So we have no 6-column layout with any of the stories. The 2-column ones are a little bit harder to read. You do get past the, I believe, the number of words that one of that Quark trainer said people are comfortable reading without kind of getting lost a little bit. But it also just becomes a little bit confusing to a reader to have so many different column widths. If you have one, like I say, if you on the page you have, especially if this one has 4 stories, doesn't have a full 5. But if you had 5 stories in the front, again, maybe one you could have 2 columns wide, and that's usually in a box. If you do have a 2-column wide one, so it's a little bit less than 2 by the time you inset it. And having the top one be 4 across 6 isn't too, it's a little bit narrower. I don't know. I wouldn't argue too much, but like I said, every one of these stories is an odd width, and I think that goes too far, and that also contributes into what was being said as far as where you're jumping from one place to another. Anything else that you saw here that's a little bit different, a little bit that you would change if you were doing this? Anything else? Is it at all strange to you that there really are no photos? I'm not even sure the top right one is a photo. I'm not sure if it's a photo or illustration. It could be either one. It's so little on it that it's hard to tell. Maybe this center left might be a photo, but I don't think so. So there's actually no photo in this. I think readers of a newspaper expect that photojournalism is part of journalism, and so I probably would not have gone with all illustrations. Like I say, maybe the top one is a photo, but it's not clearly a photo, and it's not a photo of much. I mean, it's a photo of a hand and a gun, so it's a little different. By the time we got done with it, like I said, we monkeyed with this quite a bit to salvage some things. you know, it's okay like it is, I think. You don't see it the way it was. We had to make quite a few improvements as it was. But anyway, let's go to another one that we haven't played with. By the way, for some reason, I don't know why, but some of these are telling me I can't get into them because they're an earlier version of Quark. So I don't know if somebody got a hold of an earlier version. I know somebody told me that their father used it at work, and so they had access to it. But without downloading some more software, I can't even open this one here. At least although I did at one point, and then it told me I couldn't after that, so I don't know. Or actually, maybe it wasn't this one. Maybe this is the one I did get over. Or maybe this is the one I was just looking at. We'll see. Okay, this is another one we did get open, and we did play with this quite a bit. Let me zoom in here, and part of it that I... Anything strange about this to you? Noting something odd? Compared down to here. So what is odd about that one? Does it jump out to you that the gutters are a lot wider? The gutters between the columns? It took me a while to figure out why that was true. And in fact, these are already corrected. So these ones were also wide. And I'm not exactly sure how the person, why they ended up doing it this way, if they just got confused, I don't really know. But it ended up, I had to figure out, had to be kind of a forensic scientist and try to figure out what they did here. I originally thought that they had, you can widen the gutters between the columns. And so I looked there first and I changed the gutters, but it was in millimeters, and so I wasn't really sure. I don't think in millimeters, so when I saw the millimeters, I thought maybe they might be wide, so I reduced the millimeters on the width of the gutters, and so I kind of made it look a little better, but it still was odd. Anyway, it took me a while to track down that they had and it wasn't that at all. They hadn't widened the gutters. They had put an inset on the entire, on all of the body text. So you still see there's this, your headline coming out to here and your story's inset. And so this is the way it looked originally. So it's not that they widened the gutters, but they put an inset on the entire story. And so it's inset from it's not an inset, actually inset is slightly different. It's an indent. It's a whole, it's not a one first paragraph indent, it's an indent of the entire copy. Whereas if we put this in a box and did inset, it would only do it would just bring in the outside text. So like what we were doing with the pull-out quotes, that pushes everything inside the box away from the outer graphic box. So that's inset. This is indent, and so they did a full text indent. So everything was a couple of several millimeters inset indented. I needed to avoid using those terms incorrectly by their language anyway. So this is an indent, a massive full story indent, not a inset. An inset would not cause this problem. And they're found at different places. So for example, if I let me get in here and show you the difference. Going to paragraph, you see this is the indent here. So this whole left side has been indented 5 millimeters almost. That's where you don't want to do it. If you're trying to offset it from a box, is that how this doesn't have a box around it. So I don't know exactly if he maybe started with trying to inset on a box and then end up with the same, maybe saving it as a style, and because it ended up being the style for all of his text, all this person's text. So we had ultra wide, the effect was having ultra wide gutters, but that didn't make sense. But if you're insetting, again, you were be more, if you were like doing a shadow box or something, you see it there. Let me see if I can find it. Of course, runaround is something else. There you're kicking the text away from something else. It could be a text box, it can be a picture, whatever. You're pushing the text away from something, so that like if we were to call it an item, then these show up. So that is pushing something away. That's not what we're looking at here either. It may be the only, I'm trying to remember, okay, here is the inset here. So that's under the text. So, this is what you would use to inset it if you're in a box and you're trying to get the text away from the box that's around it. Then you use the inset. So that's under text. So each of these has a different purpose. So here under text you find, or rather in the text box, you find the inset. And that would make sense. I mean, it says text, but it's not really, well, they distinguish that from character attributes. But in this case, probably the icon is more illustrative of what it is than the word. It's not what I would call text, it's the text box. And indeed it has the kind of the dotted line around the text. So you're really talking about the text box here. And so when you're talking about the text box, now you start talking about insets, because your text box can be a graphic box. When I was showing you how to do the shadow boxes last week, I turned a text box into a graphic box, which you can do. And so rather than, I used to always make it a graphic box first and then do the text box separately, but there's no reason to do that anymore. They allow you to use the text box as a graphic box, but you need to then have the inset part of it. In the old versions of desktop publishing, you had to have them separate because you had to create your shadow box, and then you put a text box inside of that, and you just manipulate your text box to create your inset. You just made your text box smaller than your graphic box. So you created your own inset. And it wasn't hard to do that. I don't think it really took any more time to just do it from scratch than to have an inset button, and that makes everything more confusing. But anyway, so it's under the text box, which they just call text, where you find the inset. It's the runaround, where you kind of could say the outset, where you are pushing text away from something. And then it's under paragraph, where you have the indent. And that's where this person got in trouble, was using the indent as perhaps what they thought would be the inset. And they're two different things. So the inset will squeeze the text within a box away from the edges, but it doesn't change the gutters. So it's not squeezing every column, it's just squeezing the entire text box away from the graphic box on the outside of it. Whereas you indent it, now it's pushing it away, and you get this false, you end up with what appears to be wide gutters, but that's not where you solve the problem. So it took me quite a while to figure out how to solve the problem, because it looked like an inset to me, or it looked like it was done with gutters, widening the gutters, but that's not where they caused the problem. It was by putting an indent on the entire body text. Other than that, we did make quite a few corrections on this too, but that was the main thing I had to figure out. I spent a long time doing that. By the time they also had extra space between all the columns, they had, and just by the time we took the indent off, suddenly stories didn't fit the same as they did before, because now you didn't have this 5mm indent on the entire story. So consequently, we actually came up with a position where we almost had to have a shadow box down here in the lower left, just in order to fill the space that they had created. So we did create a shadow box, and I chose gray because there's a lot of gray in the photos. I told you the other day that the best way to choose a color is to find a dominant color in the photos around it, and then try to match those colors. Well, when you looked at the photos, basically the photos had a lot of gray in them, not very many distinctive. To find a real strong distinctive color, you had to go all the way up here to the Big Mac, and that's still not a very dominant color for the whole page. So the page was pretty gray by just the nature of their photos, oddly enough. And so I made the shadow box gray. Okay, let's go to another one that hasn't been at all fixed. I'm not sure which ones I have already opened, so I'll look at another one here. Okay, this one I did not do anything with in class. This person, they found a good online photo apparently for this story. Taking the wide view here, look at the whole page. Anything you see that you change. Sometimes to see things like unity and contrast, you have to see the whole page. So I will come out and look at that first, usually. Anything on this page, looking at the whole page, that looks odd to you or that you might change? Some of them I'm suspicious of. I can't tell without blowing in a little bit closer, but there's some stuff that appears rather suspicious to me that I see as problematic from this view. Anybody? Again, what you guys thinking about this stuff? As editors, you need to be able to glance at something to see if you're seeing problems. There's a lot of things that are good about it, by the way. Good headlining as far as sizing goes. We have contrast and headline sizes. We have, looks like they're going more with summary sentences than with sub-headlines that I recommend, but that's, I give you that choice. In this case, if we were a real newspaper, we'd probably, that'd be one of the stylistic things we'd decide as a group. Do we want summary sentences or do we want sub-headlines? And we would do it more consistently, one way or the other. We probably wouldn't mix them very much. But in this case, I'm letting you decide. So that isn't odd necessarily. I gave you permission to do that. Any obvious problems, Steve, before we zoom in? One thing I would point out, since you guys are shy to do it, we have lines of headline that are quite short. This one I would, well, first off, the entire thing could be a little wider, so we're not filling the whole space. I would try to get even the longest line closer to the whole available width, and then I might end up on that one using at least if I'm fixing it, and rather than starting from scratch, I might use that function that allows me to widen without making taller, make it wider. I might use that function here to make the letters fatter to fill that space. The comparative length is fine. Within 3 characters is the professional standard. I told you I'd take it easy and let you have 4 characters. But these ones this are way too much down here. Here we're at, and I noticed some of the European newspapers do not seem to care too much about length of headlines. And it may be that the whole world may be changing right now because it's hard to control it on the internet if you're not going to do it with a PDF. With a PDF, you can control your width, but if you're doing it with HTML, people look at HTML in different ways with different devices, and so it's hard to fill the headline space and be confident that it's not going to look different on somebody else's device. It probably will. So we have so many browsers out there that are a little bit different, and then you have your mobile devices versus your desktop devices. You have different size monitors. You have so many variables when you go to online headlines that it's dangerous actually to make your headlines too close to filling the space. I try to equalize the lines as much as I can, but I do end up leaving quite a bit of space on purpose for that reason. So mine might be closer to this one if it's online. Might even be leaving a little more white space than that because I'm not confident what it'll look like in somebody else's browser. And so the very nature of that is causing us to see headlines a little bit differently, and consequently it may be bleeding over into the printed copy as well, that people are saying, well, this is what it looks like online, why can't we do this in a printed newspaper? And it looked like from some of the European illustrations we had that maybe they are saying, we don't care. But standard American, anyway, you're not going to see this in the 30 newspapers and of those American front pages. You're not going to see these sorts of gaps between lengths of the story. And I'm not sure most of the front pages we see in that particular publication, the anatomy publication, I'm not sure if we saw any, or at least there weren't very many, if any, illustrations from Great Britain. So Great Britain may be closer to American style, and they're showing us German and Russian and stuff, and they may just have a different culture in how they do their headlines. But the older newspapers in the world, well, maybe I shouldn't say that compared to Germany, since the Gutenberg there. But as far as the free press started in America, because other countries didn't have freedom. So as far as people having a lot of freedom with the newspapers and stuff, that was American. But anyway, so this is too much. I said four characters. Okay, this was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, about 12 characters short. That's way too short by my standards. And by any American standards, we're not going to do that. The one here, the Peking story, is about 8 or so. Again, that's too much. I want you to try to come up with whatever synonyms or whatever, and we'll maybe work on these headlines a little bit to try to show you my thought process and trying to fix them. The other thing that appears to me from looking from far away is that we have 2 box stories, and I said that's okay, having them overlap a little bit, not ideal, but by the rules that I set up, that if you have 2 stories next to each other, one's in a box, then you have, that's what you end up with. Sometimes you do have 2 boxes on a page. I showed you with my I think it's in the tabloid, actually, the tabloid, that it is possible to avoid 2 boxes on a page, even with under my style. But you end up having to, typically, and you definitely get away with, stop from having 2 boxes next to each other if you have a 6-column story across the middle, or something like that. There are ways to try to avoid that, but not too bad. I would, if this were clear up here someplace, I would have more of a problem. But actually, my first example to you in the broadsheet, I had a box down here and a box up here, and with a little bit of overlap. And so I can't complain since I did it. But you do have to think about trying to avoid box against box, and the less overlap there is, the better. Let's do that way. So this looks okay, but coming back to boxes, the text is too tight to the boxes. I can see that, I'm sure of that, without zooming in. So we need to get the text away. So we were talking about insetting. We can go and show insetting. We can go experience that just to make sure. So I'm going to go in here and go to Control 1, take a closer look. Now this is somewhat deceptive. It is not exactly touching, is it? So the seeing the whole page is different. So I'm wrong. The lines look thicker, and so the thickness of the lines, when you looked at it at Control 0, made it look like they were touching, because the lines look darker and broader and touching the text. And when you go to Control 1, lo and behold, it's not tight. It is tight, but it's not touching. And so they did use the inset function already to get it away from the edges. But again, in case you, again, don't remember that, how to do that, this is a function underneath the, you'll be clicking on the box, because this is insetting from the frame. And so when we go look at that, we select the box and we go up in here and we're looking, I think we decided this is where we're looking at here to find, see, that's not, something's wrong here. It's not showing us all the options. Okay, so I had to go to my text tool to get into here to see all the options. But so in that, when we're in the text tool, we see the inset. We didn't see it when I just clicked on the box. We didn't see the inset function. But here's the inset function. And this suggests they're not insetting. So what did they do? That did not show inset. So let's go investigate. We're again forensic investigators here. What did they do if they did not use inset? It's clicked, but there's no inset. Maybe this is minimal inset. Maybe there's just gives you that much at minimum. Let me see if we add to 1% or 1 point. It doesn't really show that it changed. So it looks to me like maybe I'm wrong in how they did this. Do we have a box inside a box? By chance. I'm going to go out here and hit Control A for select all so I can see, okay, they do have a box inside a box. So this is kind of the old-fashioned way of doing it, and you can do it this way. You just have draw two boxes. One is for the graphic and one is for the text, and you draw your text box smaller than your graphic box. You don't have to do it this way, but in some ways it's actually easier to do it this way. You have a little, actually in some ways, I mean, you're going to go through multiple steps anyway. And I think maybe with my first broadsheet I did it this way, so maybe they're following when I did my first demonstration, I may have done this too. You don't have to do it this way. You can draw one box, and it can be both your graphic and your text box, and then you use the inset function. But this also works. I do think it's a little bit tight, but I'm not going to change it at this point. It's not touching, but it's tight. So I would come a little bit further away from the edge, but I don't want to change the layout for that purpose. Okay, let's look at the headline and see if we can come up with a better way. So when I start looking at headlines, when I'm thinking, how do I make this fit right? I'm thinking, is there another word that could be added? Is there a word that can be taken away? So they are closer to the same. Is there a bigger, a longer word that I can use in place of a word here now as a synonym? Or on the other hand, is it shorter? Maybe getting it shorter on one of the lines, it still will equalize them, and then I make them all a little bit bigger, perhaps. So here, Peking University under fire for silencing public outcry. Typically, this would be where we take off the an and the are typically out, not in our headline e's, let me put it that way. The headline verbiage is good. That's nice American sort of English and under fire is something that we would say. You can change it, but I'm not sure it changed the width that much. So criticized would be another word instead of under fire, criticized. One thing, however, that you do notice is that this is not an active verb. So how would this read if you change this into an active verb? What's the natural active verb form of this this sentence, if you want to call it a sentence? What makes it inactive? Anybody? Well, if it's going to be active, it has to have a verb that, well, you end up changing basically the object is in first place in the sentence, not the subject. The subject of this is really the public. The public is creating an outcry against the university. And so to make this an active, so that you can look at that too. You can be active or inactive. We encourage active. In some cases, you actually do go inactive to make things fit. So it is an option to look at how to make things fit, is to go inactive. In this case, this is inactive. And so another way of looking at it is to make it active. So not really public so much as students, I think, are protesting it. So you could say, we could reword it to being, students criticize or attack, verb like that. Peking University for silencing protest, something like that, or for protecting rapist. You can look at different ways of wording it, but you end up actually with more options once you turn it into active form. And so we might go the other way and make this an active. So in this case, we'd be saying, get in here. And sometimes when you start, another problem with having too many different boxes, like I'm presuming the headline is its own text box also. So you have a text box inside a graphic box and a text box with the headline, and you've got you have a lot of elements here at one place. So you notice it's sometimes hard to get to the element you want. Now you can send the selected element back, which automatically brings anything behind it forward. So that's one thing to do, is just click. So it's right now it's trying to protect or trying to, the front seems to be the graphic box. We can send it back. So we'll send it to the back. And now we can get to the other boxes, the text boxes. By the way, we are a little bit tight here also. And we don't have a caption for this picture, so there's no caption for the picture. The headline is, if you don't have a caption, is about the right distance from the photo. It's pretty tight to the text box under it. I'd like a little bit more air there. But anyway, getting back to this, we could go, once I get in here, I might go ahead and save this in case I want to go back to it for some reason, but I'm going to hit copy there. But I'm going to start off with students. Here, this is a good place for synonyms. What did they do to Peking? Did they criticize? Did they rip? In some of our past presenters, they said be careful of using headline cliches like rip. But that's actually why they have become cliches, is because they're short. And so this is the spot where we might try rip, because it fits. So if we say rip, that's almost a perfect fit. But it is kind of a headline-ese cliche. You have to understand that you're using a cliche. But like I said, we're looking for synonyms. We need short synonyms, long synonyms as headline writers. And so this is a short form of criticize or attack, is rip and headline-ese. And so considering that I'm trying to make this fit, I'm going to use the cliche. So here we don't need under fire anymore. I'll take that off. So they rip Peking University for silencing public outcry. That's a little bit short if we take out the which is not part of headline-ese. We can try protest. That gets you within what I'm requiring you to do is 4 characters. That does get you within 4 characters. But my standard is 3, so I'm going to look at it a little bit harder for that. Well, you then can go to protesters. And actually just one of them. Well, it's kind of hard to have public protesters if it's only singular. There are others that I guess you're by silencing one, you end up silencing more than one, because they're using her as making an example out of her by punishing her individually. So others don't want that same consequence. We talked about maybe protecting rapist faculty member or something, rapist faculty. You can make this pretty strong. And of course, that would be even more criticized. But if he has actually, and some of the stories indicated, I think, that he was, but has he actually been convicted is the question. If he's actually been convicted of raping her, and I think he was, then you can call him a rapist. Because we go back to the warnings they had with covering crime. You don't want to call somebody a rapist if they were not actually convicted. Once they're convicted, you can. They're now rapists. That it may end up being unfair to somebody who later on they find out wasn't the rapist, but you're still protected by law because they were convicted of being a rapist. So they're not. It'd be hard for them to sue you later, even in American courts. So you could go the other direction. And now I'm going to save this part so I can go back to this if I need to. We're protecting rapist professor. That fits nicely. That is a stronger headline, but it's also going to, if you're in China, you better watch out. They're not going to like that if you get that critical, because that one will help cause an uproar in the public, and of course they're not going to want that. They've already been trying to silence this person, and this is a tough headline, but it's accurate. At least by American standards, if he was convicted, then he's a rapist professor. And that's going to probably cause more protest if you call it that, but that's what he is, and that's why the students are upset, obviously, is that he's, more specifically, that the student that he raped committed suicide because of the emotional problems she had subsequently. So anyway, we're a little bit shy. You know, I'm not going to always be real concerned about if the headline, if you leave a little bit of gap there, I'm not too concerned, but again, I can show you, and it is within 3 characters of the end. So even by my standards, it is within 3 characters of the full width. And sometimes a little bit of error is fine, but if I wanted to fill that up, then that's where I would go to the, I believe it's under text, and over here where you widen it, but in theory you don't make it deeper. You don't increase the depth of it, only the width of it. And so it's clicked already for width. And so I did notice it goes up rather quickly, so it might actually go too far and be too big. I may have to reduce it, but the natural, when I hit the up arrow, it's going to go to, I think, 110, I think, which may be too far. Yeah, it is too far. So here you might have to go 105, something like that. Now that fits a little tighter, so 105 fit. So with these drop-down menus and stuff, they don't always give you all the options, so be aware of that. Their first option was 110, and 110 didn't fit, but 105 did fit. You just have to type it in. If you're trying to increase the point size, yesterday we got into a point where the point size was, it was so close to filling the space, but it just barely went over. And so I went to a half a point size. So say 40 point was too wide, I went to 39.5. And so again, desktop publishing allows you to do that. And so I was able to fill up that space just without diminishing the headline significantly, because a half a point is not much. You're not hardly going to, the only thing you saw was that it actually fit on the page. That's what you saw. But that was about it. So you can look at your headlines in lots of different ways, and this is one way. Again, look at both the active and inactive. In this case, I changed to active, and I had more choices. I had a lot more choices when I went to active. Sometimes you will go inactive to make it fit, but that should be your last choice. Actually, is to go inactive. So, think about what your real subject is here. Your subject here was the students. It wasn't the university. And that's why the verb was a gerund instead of an active verb. So once you turn it around, you had more options. If you're using a summary sentence, it needs a period on it. It does a sentence. One thing I would say also is this is about the right depth for a summary sentence. We had some yesterday. I think we looked at, I think it's the one with the gun on it. The summary sentences were like 2 lines is all. A summary sentence is supposed to have some graphic impact, so a 2-line summary sentence is not probably long enough. This is about the right length for a summary sentence, or what they would call a blurb, or what some people would call in a blurb. But basically it's a summary sentence, however you want to call it. Summary sentence, blurb, blurb at the start of the story. So this is about the right length. 2 lines is not enough. So the summary sentence in one of the students created where basically could have been a subheadline, but by the rules, a summary sentence should be smaller and a subheadline can be bigger in point size. And so by keeping it at 14 point, it was basically a headline, but it was written like a summary sentence, and it just didn't have the graphic impact it should have had. So if you're going to use a summary sentence, this is about the right length. It can be a little bbit shorter, but I would say you're expecting it to be at least 4 lines if it's a summary sentence. And this one's 6, that's okay, but not 2. You need to write a long enough summary sentence that has some graphic impact. Otherwise, there's no reason to even put it in there. You should make it, if you want fewer words, then make it a subheadline and make it bigger. But you have to have more graphic impact than a 2-line summary sentence. Up here, again, I'll just illustrate. So this is already done. So if I'm your news editor and you're doing your work under me and you're you're fresh out of university and I think you didn't make this fill out well enough, then, and I don't have time to monkey with this very much, this is exactly where I would use this widening function here, because I don't want to have to redo this. However, before I do that, let me point out a couple of things. Freedom of speech is, we're looking here at basically title capitalization, and that is not done very much in newspapers anymore. So the ones that, well, if you're saying then you can take out, fight about, but maybe in this case, the phrasing of it is such that maybe you need to leave the word in there. There are cases where you do, where it just absolutely does not sound right to take the article out. And that may be the case here, a fight about freedom of speech. It sounds better than fight about freedom of speech. It doesn't mean the same even. So anyway, once I lowercase that, then I can go up here and increase the width of those letters and not go deeper, but just make it a little bit more powerful. So that's at 110%. Looks like I might be able to go 115, but I know I can't go 120. I can tell already I can't go 120. So I'll try 115, 115, enter, and that fits pretty much perfectly. One line is, three counts shorter than the other, but that's within even professional differences, so that's fine. So you get a little more power from that headline without making it go deeper, without having a bigger point size. So this says it's 24 point, but now by the time you made the letters thicker, it really has the impact. You increased it by 15%. So if you go 24, what would be that? It'd be 10% of that would be 2.4, and then so you're about 4. So basically, you went to about 28% in its impact. So it's a 24-point headline, but has the impact of a 28% headline. So you're almost a 30-point in its impact, if you understand what I'm trying to say. This person, again, needs another period up here. If we're using you see that's 3 lines there. And this one should be actually some more. If it's going to be a summary sentence, then you need to make it grammatically correct. Malaysia to become a cashless society. And it has to have a period at the end. This is still only 3 lines, and you see it just doesn't have very much impact. Even at 3 lines, 2 lines definitely not. So I would try to get this to 4 lines to have a bigger impact graphically, which is part of the purpose of either a subheadline or a summary sentence blurb. This is where also, if you needed to, maybe it's just the adding the proper name in here is all we need. The digital payment system, I believe they're talking about a specific one, right? So if we have the specific name, we could add that in there and kick it over. Okay, so this is a partnership. So you could actually put Razor as one and Singtel. I think you can just say Singtel. So Razor and Singtel. And if you're going to use it, Maybe you can make it hyphenated. Correct or not? No, it's ER. Just doing that still doesn't get it over to 4 lines. Well, so we could go and say digital payment system being created by, I'll put back in the company, Singtel partnership. May lead so there we go, our 4 lines. So anyway, just look for a little more information. And that's the idea of a summary sentence, is to give information. So that's not a bad thing to do, to add who's partnering to do this within the summary sentence. So I would try to go 4 lines at least. 3 seems just graphically not very strong, and 2 definitely is way too short. 4 looks like it's fine. You can go 6 is okay. 4 to 6 is probably in the range that we want a summary sentence. Something here that somebody's doing, let's talk about this a second. So this student tried to do a very positive thing of putting in subtitles. Again, not to be confused with subheadlines, but subtitles. We just had a presentation, I think the one from the anatomy, I think mentioned that subtitles are typically 3 to 4 words is all. And they might also be a little bit bigger. So these are bold. So it'd be better to try to figure out 3 or 4 words and make them maybe 1 point size bigger to have the graphic impact you want. This may also be maybe too many of them. I don't know, the rule that I heard was you start using them, that you're somewhere 6 to 8 paragraphs between them. And this has them about every 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs, 6. And this one is only 1, 2, 3, 4 before that one. This one's only 2 paragraphs for the next one. So I think this one has too many subtitles, and I think we should probably get rid of. In fact, first off, I don't think you need this one this close to the start, because you just got past your summary sentence. So I would cut that one out altogether. Of course, would require some other changes with the story. But I wouldn't have that one. By the way I was taught, we never had one that close to the headline. It was always like 8. The first one would be like 8 paragraphs down before we had our first subtitle. And so that would come into here, be in a different line. Graphically, I think it's better. So this one might, I don't know, you have to choose if you're only going to take it down to about 4 words or so. And actually, a 20-year-old rape case is a little bit more than 4 words, because it's you have a hyphenated adjective, but it's still, so it might be the first part here. China's Me Too. Protest, maybe. There we're at, 3 words, depending on how you want to count them. And so I'm going to just bring it up 1 size, make it just a little bit bigger. fewer words but bigger. Go to the next column. We've got another one there, and it's only 1, 2, 3. It's about 4 paragraphs away. And then it's a very short distance to the next one. So I think actually on this page with the layout of it, I would have only probably 2, definitely a maximum of 3 subtitles. So it also kind of depends on how they come together. Like I don't want one right next to one in the column prior to it. That doesn't look right. So if I'm going to have one in the third column, I'd probably put it up here. So where you place it ends up being part of, that's why an editor would do it, because the reporter doesn't really know how it's going to be laid out. So I would, if I'm going to put one in the third column, and I'm not sure that it's needed that soon, it would have to be above or below. And this is right dead center, the one in the second column. If I put one, I'd have to put it up here to get it away from that one. And again, we want to get it down to 1 line and even actually be able, I would never put both like the CFL inside of it with the school actual name. I wouldn't do that in a subtitle for sure. You can see this isn't going to go up a size. So probably just go to Peking University responds. Maybe just that. So down to 3 words. So Peking University responds. And then up for, make that a, I think it may actually be going up 2 points because I'm just hitting the shift control greater than sign. So that's going to 12 point, but looks okay. And then if I was going to do it down here, then it would, this would be again away from the others. I'm not sure you need one in all 3 columns, but again, if I were doing it, I would make sure they were not touching, right next to each other. So here, maybe relevant information censored. I'm not going to get that one up to 12 point, I don't think. But maybe just information censored. Either, so in this case, there's only 2 words, but they're long words, so that's all that's going to fit us if I go up to 12 point anyway. So I need to be consistent, either 11 or 12 point. It could go to 11, but I think it looks fine if you're going to do it. Now, I'm not requiring people to do subtitles, but this person's taken some time to do some extra stuff. Well, I see we have a subtitle up here still. We don't want that one anymore, so we'll get rid of that one. And obviously, we've got a problem here. This is demonstrating perhaps a problem, because why isn't some of the story from page 2 coming onto page 1? This is why we link stories, is that the editor starts making changes, suddenly, where's the rest of this text here? It should flow in naturally if they're linked. And so it's clearly not linked to page 2. I'll be checking this stuff. So this page is actually a pretty good page, but I don't understand. It's so easy to link. I don't understand why somebody wouldn't link them. But this is why you do link, is that you may not be the last person that touches this, That's one problem. So if somebody else does this and they see, what the heck are you doing here? Then they have to go to page 2 and cut some stuff out of page 2 and bring it over here. You don't want to have to do that. But if they're linked, then you do recognize you have to go to page 2 and balance out the columns and stuff. But now you have to decide, do I kind of start from scratch and link these the way they should have been linked? Or do I go over there on page 2 and try to just cut some story and bring it over here? And sometimes it just, you change something very, very subtly. You think you're not making a change, and suddenly, if you're doing a cut and paste, you'll suddenly find there's one word on this next line. It's not even the end of a sentence. Actually, I did that last night, and I thought I was being pretty careful. I was cutting and pasting because somebody else did not link, and I looked back there, and suddenly there was a word that had gone over to the next line. And I don't even know why. I guess it probably had to do, maybe I don't even know. I don't remember how it could have suddenly ended up on the next line. But that's the problem of not having things linked properly, is that strange things happen. And suddenly you're missing a line. Suddenly it's pushed out of the way. You don't even notice that you just cut, basically by the fact that they're not linked to each other, the two boxes aren't, suddenly you're missing an entire line of text. Or you have redundant text. You put some on one page and you left some on the next page too, so you have redundant text. Or you have suddenly, like I said, you just have suddenly a word that's not the end of a sentence dangling down here in another last line for no good reason. Another thing is if you don't do it at the end of a paragraph, then I can tell real easily, because if you cut in the middle of a sentence, rather, then I can see basically the half a sentence that's on page 2 is indented, probably. And so that's one of the ways I can tell. The easiest way is just to go in here and hit Control A from inside the story. And if it's linked, then clearly it would also be selecting the text on page 2. Which it's not. So if it were properly linked, this would also all be blue and selected when I did a Control A. So that takes me like 1 second to find out you didn't link. So you need to link. Well, we are past time here already, or at time. So I'll stop there, but I just wanted to, take you through my analysis of these pages and what I'm going to see that's wrong or right. Try to help you to think about that yourselves, for those few that actually participated answering questions. But maybe if you didn't answer questions, you were still thinking, and I asked the question, what looks wrong here? Because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go on each of your pages. I'm going to hit Control-0 to look at the whole page, look at how things are fitting, and look at that unified. I'll be able to see the headlines from there. Are they using title capitalization? They're not supposed to be using title capitalization. Supposed to be using sentence capitalization or down capitalization. Looking to see if things are too tight. Sometimes that can be a little deceptive to Control-0, but Control-1, then I'll see the truth. I can see whether lines are too short and headlines. So I can do a lot of my grading looking from the Control-0. I can see if stories are linked together, stuff like that. And then I go in and Control-1 and start looking at the particulars. Is this text really touching the box? And find out it wasn't. Still a little tight, but not touching. Stuff like that. So hopefully that's some help. That's the way I'll be looking at it. So I'm going to try to get all the grading done by Monday, so you have a little bit of time to look. But I'm not going to. I can't. With 96 students, I can't print out all the copies and redline them stuff the way I would like to. And so probably your online input will be like headlining 25 out, it's like 20 out of 25, or if you really did a bad job, if you didn't take any time to even try to make the lines somewhat to the same length, it might be 10 out of 25. I could knock some of them way down. Some of the headline writing has been very lazy, or I'm not sure what else to say about it. It seems like the student's lazy someplace. Either they're too lazy to listen to my lectures, too lazy to read the critique sheet rules, or too lazy to take the time to make the lines balance. But somewhere there's laziness there. And so that lazy headline writing is going to get penalized if it's too lazy. This one here wasn't that bad. It was a little short at places, but not too terribly bad. But some of the others that I reviewed in other tutorials, way short, not acceptable. So they're going to get quite a bit deducted. That's one area that I talked a lot about. So if somebody didn't bother to listen, that's a them problem. That I have talked about a lot. So, okay, well, class is over. Thank you.